Welcome to the Hate to Lose podcast. I'm your host, Christian John Bradley, and here we talk to people who hate to lose more than they love to win. And today, have a very special guest, Darlene Morales. She is first of all, just like an amazing friend, mentor to me and my wife. We had our wedding here in our backyard right over there. Mm-hmm. And she's also the founder and creator of the Little Sarge Preschool. So give it up for Darlene Morales.
Hi, thank you for having me, Christian. It's been like long time coming, so I'm excited to be here and to be a part of this. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Let's jump right in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Talk to me about your upbringing.
Wow, right in. I love it. Okay, so I was not born in LA or in the US. I'm from El Salvador, and I grew up, or I was born into what you would consider a normal family. Mom and dad got married, and eventually I was born. Soon after, my brother was born, like 11 months after. So we're not even a year apart. And my mom was a pretty driven lady. My dad was a teacher at a local school. They married young, my mom was young. My dad was older, like I think about 14 years older than my mom, which is pretty wild. Yeah. She was pretty driven. By the time she was 26, she had her own restaurant out of our extended home. And so unfortunately, when I turned 6, she passed away from cancer. It was quite unexpected and fast. And soon after that, my dad had been a recovering alcoholic, and I think also had suffered depression as a result. And he kind of bounced back to that and couldn't care for my brother and I. And so we came from having like what you consider a traditional, normal family to having to live with my grandma, who at that time was like in her 70s, and her daughter, who was not married and didn't have any kids. So it was very matriarchal, and she was in her 40s, and so we were embraced by them. I lived in their household for about 3.5 years, and then I was behind the scenes. Things were happening on my mom's side of the family, who thought I'd be better off if I was in the U.S., have better opportunities. And in the 3.5 years time, my paperwork to be legal in this country just was processed. And so I was abruptly kind of moved from my new family to the U.S. So that's kind of from 6 to 9.5, almost 10. I shifted to 3 different families. So that's kind of then when I was here, it was a completely different. It was a shock in so many different ways. Completely new culture. I came from a very small town where literally everybody knew everyone, and we had a lot of family, like generations that were born there and lived there. And my mom had her own business. Then I moved to my grandma's house. She had a little mom and pop, like little mini market out of her house.
What was that like?
That was so much fun, actually. I absolutely loved it. I used to sit on top of the counters and serve people like whatever they wanted. I would grab it and give it, and I would exchange the money and have conversations with a lot of adults every single morning. In the evenings, we had the regulars that would come in and get their little sodas and hang out. We actually had seats, like benches, for people to just sit and hang out. Sometimes they wouldn't even come to shop; they just come to hang out.
That's great.
So it was pretty fun.
Great. And in this time, what type of kid were you?
So I was pretty. I was a little bit of a nerd. I was a little bit of a, you know, I like to study. I wanted to make sure that I did the right thing by my teachers. Uh, Still in El Salvador at that time, you could get a little spanking if you didn't do what you were supposed to. But I never really had to worry. I was always competitive too. So I have to tell you a story.
For sure.
This is pretty crazy. My mom had already passed away, and I was in the first grade. And as much as my grandma and my aunt loved and cared for me, that whole going to school and like checking up on me wasn't really their thing. I mean, I remember walking to school because it was literally on the same block. I lived on the same block of the school, and you didn't have a lot of cars. There's no traffic lights where I'm from, so that gives you an idea of like there's no stop signs. There's just like no street names,
No
just
street names.
corners. No, just corners. Oh, the lady that lives down the street, that's where you turn the corner, and that's how you get places. And so we had a very competitive kind of system where you had first place, second place, and third place every grade. And they did not mess around too. If you did not go do things the way you're supposed to, you could be in first grade for 3 years. You could be you could be 12 and still be in first grade. They did not. They were like, you got to get your things done, and then you go to the next grade. So I remember that it was the day of like the presenting of like, so you had like the traditional way that you went to the next grade. And it was kind of public where everyone's there and they kind of say, okay, who got first place, who got second place, who got third place. And you also learned who didn't pass to the next grade. So now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, you were in my grade. So we're the same age, right? And I find like, no, you're like 3 or 4 years older than me.
Wow.
So that means that you skipped a
Wow.
few grades. But there was crowds already. And I showed up a little bit late. So I remember there was like everyone sitting on the floor, and I'm trying to get to the front where I know they're going to be giving out the first place, and they had like a little gift, and I remember like I need to get there. And I'm like going through kids and adults and saying, excuse me, no one's going with me. I didn't have like my aunt or my grandma or my dad. It was just me, taking myself and me wanting to be there. And I remember a lady saying, look at this little girl trying to get to the front. She's probably not even going to get any kind of place. And I remember that, and and guess what? I got first place.
Let's go.
But I still remember that feeling of like, and I still have a picture. I have to find it and I have to show you me standing next to my teacher. My hair is all over the place. I just made it, but I made it. And I was that sense of like accomplishment that my mom had just passed away. Literally, my dad had kind of also moved on, and here I am in this scenario, and like just pushing myself to get to that front because I kind of had this like, you know what, I want to be there when they give the prizes to the best student, and it was rewarding to have that kind of like first place thing,
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, I see so many like parallels in your story. Like you're pushing through the crowd to get the gift that you knew you wanted, but you're also pushing to get there from another area, and it seems like your mom had passed away. You're trying to figure things out as a student. You're pushing in both of these ways, and you can finally, get that crown. So my question is, why was accomplishing that important to you at the time?
I think I was very driven, I would say. I think it was important for me to, in some ways, at that time, find like, you know what, this is something that I find value in, and that I find meaning in and purpose in, and I just wanted to do the best that I could. And I think looking back, I mean, I didn't think about like the obstacles or the things that I had like gone through. I didn't think about that. I just wanted to be the best that I could. And for me, not knowing, right, that I would win first place, but being there and actually achieving that, that was like, and then to kind of say, in your face, lady.
I have a story for you.
You know,
Absolutely,
it's
sure.
crazy
Yeah.
because I those words were like, you know, she didn't even say them to me, but she said them about me. And I don't even, the crazy thing is, I don't remember her. I don't remember who that was, but I remember what she said. And then to kind of go back and say, hey, you know what? I pushed through literally and figuratively. And look, I kind of knew that I had worked hard, but, you know, and I was like 7 years old. And
Yeah, that's incredible tenacity, push, will, and I have a story to share with you. Actually, we were almost around the same age. I was 5, first grade, and switched to a new school, and I'm competitive, so like I just have a question I ask, I want to be the first like get up there, and as a year continued, I realized I'd have my hand up and no one else will have their hand up, and she'll wait. She'll look at my hand and she will look away and then wait for someone else to lift her hand up. And that went on, and I would get blamed for a lot of the stuff. Like I would be bullied, and then I'll get in trouble because I'll fight back. And it was just a really toxic environment, and I was at risk of failing and staying in that class. And it was a time of like the I guess the standardized test we had to take to get to the next grade, and we took it. I was one of the first kids done, and the next week she like had the results up, and I don't know if she was legal, but she did it. She like told everybody the grades. She read the grades out loud.
That's crazy.
And she looked at me. She got mine, and she looked at me in shock. And she looked back down and looked at the paper again. Looked at me, and she was like, "Christian, almost a perfect score. Did you cheat?"
Oh no,
And
she did not.
She did, and that literally crushed
Oh.
all confidence in reading and writing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I share that because it's also an in your face moment, because the same thing that she broke was exactly what I got my degrees in at USC.
Let's go.
Years later.
Yes.
And actually, I graduated and I looked for her.
Yeah.
I did. I could not find her.
See, that's the thing. I'm like, I wish I remembered who you were, lady, because I would go look for you.
I couldn't find her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely
But
feel
that's
what
your
you
best, like,
that's
reward. Like
legit. There's so many like so much restoration in that. But even going back to your story, you mentioned like how you were self-driven, you're a dreamer.
Yeah.
And so like how did that drive show up in that transition from El Salvador to the U.S.?
Yeah. Good question. But I got to tell you, I relate to that raising your hand and getting like ignored.
Really?
Yes, to the point where even I would say even in college, I feel like that was me even in college. Like sometimes I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to raise my hand.
Wow.
I'm going to wait till someone else like raises their hand, and then, because then you lose confidence, right? You're like, am I just overly like,
Yeah.
But
Wild.
but going back to your question, I mean, how did it transfer here? I think there was a lot I had to overcome. There was a lot of trauma too that I wasn't even like aware, right? a lot of grieving, a lot of loss that I had experienced. And then at the same time, I'm having to face new challenges. Um, I came and I did not know a word of English. I came to the fifth grade, at the end of fifth grade, and I loved my teacher, but I couldn't communicate with her. And I remember like her saying good morning to me, and I would just smile and kind of like nod because I'm like, I have no idea what you just said to me. But me wanting to like have that ability to communicate. So I think I had inner drive always to push myself beyond what was comfortable. And I think that was, I never saw it as a negative, you know? I think that I would challenge myself. I would ask for help when I couldn't like figure things out. Sometimes I wouldn't get the help I needed, to which I felt a little bit kind of like defeat at some moments, but they were just moments. They were never places I wanted to stay in, you know?
Why?
I it wasn't me. It was like this is not who I am. You know, it's this kind of like inner fighter, you know? It's kind of like Louis, it's like you're gentle, but there's underneath that there's like a fighter, and he's right, you know, and I think it's channeling it the right way, because you can easily, you know, take that and put it somewhere that is not going to do you any good. But
So I want to like
yeah.
go deep in this. Is many people take the obstacles and use them as crutches.
Yeah.
You didn't. You say you didn't want to stay in defeat because that's
No.
not who you are. So take me to those moments when you felt defeated. What were those conversations like in your mind? Or like what was
Christian, I doing homework. I couldn't. I was like, "What is it saying?" I couldn't. I couldn't understand it. Feeling like a little bit out of place. As I shared, I grew up in a place where it's like, it was a small community, and you felt safe. You knew everyone, or mostly everyone. And if you didn't know somebody, they for sure knew you, you know? And coming to a place where, so where I grew up, there was only one school, and that school was elementary, middle school, and high school, all in one. Yeah. So
great?
there was no hospitals, so you had like a clinic, but if you got sick on Sunday, you're
Got tough it
on
out.
your own. You're on your own because Sundays were closed, kind of thing.
Wow.
And so coming to a city where people's lives, the pace of life is just fast. So having to kind of jump on that treadmill when you've been kind of just, your pace has been a little bit slower. But also kind of enjoying kind of that kind of, so finding the challenges and feeling like, okay, I'm stuck right now. Number one, feeling like, okay, this is not where I want to be. This is not where I'm meant to be. I'm going to find my way out. Resources. God was my main resource. He was my stronghold. He was my refuge. He was my light. He was everything, because believe it or not, I had obstacles even at church.
What do you mean?
It was crazy. Well, you know, this is the thing. So I really, really took seeking God like serious. And so even as a young girl, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be in the Bible study. I'm going to be in the prayer with the older ladies. I gravitated to older people, gathering, I guess, wisdom, things that I didn't really know, but now in retrospect, I'm like, you know what? I was seeking wisdom.
Yeah.
And I would stay. And so what I didn't know was that some of the young girls, you know, listen, I stayed because God was my only refuge. He was all I had. And so all the girls had their families, had their quote unquote normal family. And so they lived life as no one, like everyone does. And so they really weren't necessarily all interested in staying in a fasting prayer,
Hmm.
um, and so what ended up happening to some of the girls when I was a teenager at church is I learned later that some of them, the parents would be like, why aren't you like that? So they would compare their daughters to me, and in return, I get the kind of like the cold shoulder, kind of like the mean girl kind of thing. So I had a lot of obstacles. They came in a lot of different ways, and so kind of some things were painful, like that teacher saying, "Are you sure you didn't cheat?"
Absolutely.
And it was like, do I hold on to this? Some of those girls actually really, after decades, I still like saw them and apologized to me, which is wild. But, when you're that young and you're having to overcome, like trying to figure out like a new country, a new language, a new family, because I came from being with my dad's family to being with my mom's family, and the dynamics was totally different.
Yeah. What you experience and what a lot of people who are like cut from the same fabric of you experience is it's like the cost of excellence. That you're so unique, you're so set apart that one you're literally like set apart, but also in that you're also become who people aspire to be, and
Yeah.
that breeds like jealousy. But you're just being who you are. You're just doing
Right.
what you know how to do, and it's like why like what's
That's
happening
that's
and
a good point.
it's that's just what it is. It's like it's a cost of excellence, and it's like and it's not for everybody because I also say this as well is that in competition confidence shows up as like focus and insecurity shows up as comparison, and that's what was going on by
Yeah.
their parents is that
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
comparing
yeah.
you because they're insecure in whatever it is that they're
Yeah.
insecure in.
Yeah.
And yeah, so then you mentioned okay being at church and everywhere you were driven to do something that was excellent. How did that carry with you from the time you got there, from the time you got to the U.S. to say high school?
Yeah. So I think I a lot I had to become very like independent, like caring for my own stuff early. So at 13, I got my first job. It actually was, I remember, as a young teen, like hoping nobody saw me on the streets because it was like a street cleaning job. I used to wear this green hard hat, a green
Wow,
top, and like a khaki pair of pants.
let's go.
And, and we used to meet at my middle school,
Mm-hmm.
and then they used to take us in a big van,
Mm.
and then they used to drop us off like at the dirtiest place,
Mm-hmm.
near the school, and we'd clean like the whole day. And it was literally the streets, so people were driving, and it was great. I mean, it taught me tenacity. It taught me, you know what? It's not bad to do something that is honorable. Like, you're doing something that's meaningful. You're doing something also to kind of like pay for my own stuff, right? I had to kind of become independent young. But it was, yeah. I mean, there were moments where I'm not gonna lie, I was embarrassed, and I was like, oh man, But it was rewarding. I feel like, looking back, I do feel like it pushed me out of my comfort to do things that taught me and helped me grow, which is important.
Were you still having issues at school or like problems? What was that like? What was the experience at
So
school?
so by that time I had acclimated. Um, I was doing pretty well at school. I really I knew what I wanted to do. So for high school, I went to a teacher training high school because I just knew I wanted to teach. I didn't share with you, but in El Salvador as a young girl, my dad was a teacher, but the local school, the janitor actually lived in the school. That's how small of a school it was. And he used to be one of our loyal customers in the market. And he would come every single night with to get himself a drink, a Coca-Cola or whatever. And once a week he would bring me chalk because my dad had bought me a chalkboard. So I just knew early on that I wanted to teach. I think I was very tapped into inner me early. Like I knew what I liked and I pursued what I liked. I also experienced things like working in high school. I ventured into working at a bank. I worked at an elementary school, and in there I worked as a teacher aide, but also in the as a librarian assistant, which I hated because I didn't want to be like stuck in like in shelves. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that whatever I did had interactions with people. So I think I was very in tune with me, like what I wanted to do, and I I was a visionary. I don't even know how to explain it more than that. Like I knew early on, okay, I absolutely hate this. I don't want to do this. I absolutely love this. How do I pursue this? And so even in high school, I went to a teacher training high school and I got the experience firsthand to work with children. And I knew I absolutely loved this. And that kind of was what kind of took me to the next phase of my life. But I overcame a lot of stuff. I mean, trials, constant.
How did you know you wanted to be a teacher?
I felt so happy when I was teaching. I felt so much joy and fulfillment and purpose in what I was doing. I felt like with young children, I just the nature of who they are, the purity of their love, the I felt like I had a calling beyond just a job, and it was really really fulfilling.
Amen. So you grew up you mentioned in an entrepreneurial environment,
Yep.
from in El Salvador, and you have this passion to one be excellent in everything that you do. Now you want to be a teacher. So how did all of that mesh? The tenacity, the desire to teach, and the desire you had, like just what you learned growing up in terms of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I guess I always saw things different than I would say most people in general. Like I even like a little parenthesis even now, like I think there's a road map to education and career, and I even now with my kids, I'm like, it doesn't have to be that way. You can kind of shift the paradigm, and I have a different perspective. Can I invite you to see it? And let's take a different route than the norm. And so that may be a little bit of a rebellious thing, I guess. I don't know what to call it, but it's just I see
It's called
things.
being a visionary
Yeah.
and a trailblazer. That's what it's
Yeah,
called.
I see things different.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I don't necessarily have to follow this to get to that end, to the same end, right? And so um, I was working at the elementary school. I knew I loved working with children. I was going to school for education, so I knew that was the path. And I used to see a lot of people coming back to school, and when I was going to school, and they already had a degree in science, in business, whatever it was, and they had ventured out, and some of them with so many regrets because they're like, I've spent all this time, resources, and here I am back. And so I kind of thought, I'm I'm really like blessed to know that this is what I want to do. And when I went to work for a private preschool, that's when, like, immediately, I mean, within days of being there, I was like, you know what? I knew I wanted to be a teacher, and I had that entrepreneurial, like, mindset. Uh, so I think I just knew, like, okay, this is what. But going back a little bit, I have to tell you, I didn't do things the normal way in most things,
Yeah.
right? So my husband and I, we married young. Louis was 21. I was 19,
Wow.
which is pretty crazy. My daughter's 20, and I'm like, wow, this is crazy. I had
Crazy.
already been married a year.
Yeah.
This is wild.
Wild.
And I'm going to school at the same time, and I'm thinking ahead. And you know, we weren't making a lot of money, Louis and I, but I always thought, okay, things are gonna look different in 10 years. And I remember uh, sitting him down, and I think I get him out of his comfort zone a
Yeah.
lot. So I was like, we're renting in 10 years. This is how much if we buy a house. Let's sit down, let's do the math. And it was kind of like, I always thought, I had a class at Santa Monica College, an amazing teacher, business teacher, and she taught me one of the most, I think, well, first of all, real estate, right? But also, she taught me the term OPM. And I was like, other people's money. I love that concept. So I'm like, wait, I'm paying someone else's mortgage. I am not okay with this. And it's going to be a sacrifice. But when I turned 20, we bought our home, which is pretty wild when you think
Wild.
about it, because we weren't making a lot of money. So there was a lot of sacrifice, right? So I think that has been parallel to all my life. And so sacrifice to me was not seen as something negative. It was seen as something that kind of like, have you heard Dave Ramsey talk about live like no one else so you can live
Live
like
like
no
no one
one
else.
else? Okay, so it's kind of that concept. Okay, you know what? It's sacrificing now, but I was always looking into the future. And so in that time, I that's when I worked at the school, and I just remember we ended up having an opportunity where I actually had been working, and I got fired. It was like, whoa, okay, I got fired. I was cleaning a house while I was going to school, because that was the only kind of flexible job. And I remember I think I didn't put the laundry away, and I let them know, but I said tomorrow I'll do it. And so, but God used that, because that was like he took me out of the rhythm to make me uncomfortable, but also to make me accessible for the next thing.
Yeah,
And
stop there. He took you. He
yes,
took you out. He made you uncomfortable to make you accessible for the next
that's
thing.
right. That's
Oh
right.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
In
Okay.
yeah. And in those moments,
Wow.
was like, okay, what's gonna happen? But see, trusting in him, he laid every moment, every step, basically for the future. He just, but he couldn't do it if I was still like in this place, in this position. I had to be kind of available.
So what was he making you accessible for?
He was making me accessible basically for the business that he would give us, which happened basically within like 3 months, like, of training. And then I opened up the school right after I was fired. And to me, it was like, wow, I would have not done it otherwise. And he laid it all. I went into a training. Well, the miracle was that because I didn't have a job, a sister from the church gave like my mother-in-law little ad that they were preparing people to open up schools, and for some reason decided to give it to her. And she said, I don't need this, but she's like, maybe you want to try this. And I was like, I will. I will. And I remember at that time, Louis was reluctant. He's like, this is crazy having like a school in the house. So I sat him down and again, projecting. I'm like, listen, this is how many kids we can have. This is how much money we can make. And this just kind of showing him the whole like, and somehow convinced him to do it. Um, and I started the school in 2000.
What was
I
that process
was
like of starting it? Like, what was that?
So this is God showed up in so many things. I already had some background, um, and I went through a lot of training, but I already had at that point like a degree in education, and I had years of experience. So I submit the application once I went through the training. And at that time, and even now, when you have a home preschool, the requirement is that you first have like the first year a small license, and then you get a large license. And I remember I submitted the application, and it was a fee at that time, like $25, which at that time to me, $25 was a lot. And so they came to do the whole process takes about 3 months for them to come out. I am actually cleaning the backyard, and as you know, Chris, we have a huge avocado tree.
Huge avocado tree.
So it used to be much bigger, believe it or not. And
Really?
yes, much bigger.
Yes. Wait, really?
Yes, it's about 75 years old.
Son.
And it used to be much bigger. And I was right under the tree sweeping off the leaves because it was in May. It was, May, it gets dark later. So it was around 7 o'clock. I'm prepping everything. I move to pick up leaves like on the corner. And then I hear this thundering sound. And I lift my head up. And like almost half the tree is coming down and sinks into like all the asphalt, everything, like the bricks, everything sinks in. So had I been there, it would have been the end of that story.
Great.
But then I was like, okay, they're coming tomorrow, 8 in the morning. Most of my yard is covered in with a tree. So he comes, I explain it, and it's at that time yellow pages. So I'm like going through the yellow pages, finding like who's gonna come and remove the tree. He just was like, you know what? It's a good thing that it happened before you actually had kids, which, yes, God was taking care of everything. As we're sitting down, I say to him, as you can see my application, I have experience, I have letters of recommendation, blah, blah, blah. Would you consider like giving me the large license? I don't even know why I asked that. That's
because you're you.
I was like, that's really bold of me, right? Yeah. And he looks at me, he's like, I'm sorry, I can't do that. If you want, I can just close the whole case and send it back, and you can reapply. You have to pay again the fee. And I was like, no, it's okay, I'll just go through it. As we're going through the motions, I just feel like the Holy Spirit convicted him, and he's like, I've never done this, but I'm gonna give you the large license, and you don't have to pay for the fee.
Wow.
to change it. So as we're talking at the end, we're leaving, I realized that he's also a pastor. And I'm like, Lord, you sent an angel, you know? And I literally went face forward and just was like in awe of what God did to open up the business. And yeah, I mean,
what was the name? What name did you give the business?
The name, we called it Little Stars.
Why?
I feel like, these are heavenly children that shine bright. And to me, it was just the appropriate name. They just shine. and they're stars, and they're bright and pure and godly, you know. So to me, that was just like the right name for that, for the school.
Yeah, this was literally and figuratively like an offspring of you as well, because you were that little star, like literally
Wow,
in
that's
every environment that you're in, and even to the
yeah.
point where your light was shining so bright it exposed other people. They were being compared to you, and that because of the light that you were that little star. So, talk to me about
That's
what the
powerful.
journey of Little Stars has been.
You know, I have to say, God has been just from the beginning there. I remember when I first opened. So, just so you know, a little fun fact, we currently have the child of my very first student is now one of our little stars,
Wow,
which is pretty
it
amazing.
is
It is really awesome
amazing.
to kind of have a full circle. And at that time, it was me,
Hmm.
just me. And now it's grown. We're like 14 staff and 65 kids. And it's just, it's definitely, so my desire was always to grow. Like it's always been, uh, I just can't help it. There's always something in the horizon.
Hmm.
You know, there's always something in the horizon. I think I'm just built that way. Um, I don't see it as a negative. I see it as God just made me in this way.
Hmm.
Um,
I have to like just the vision you have is fascinating to me, because there's a difference between sight and vision.
yeah,
It's like people have sight, like they see like this.
yeah,
It's like stuff that's here, and they operate based on what's here, what's now. But people who have vision see something, see through it. It's like you see an opportunity that doesn't even exist. And like I think for me, it's like I will see a circumstance and it looks
yeah,
like an equation to me that equals a solution, and I see that solution like right where I am right now,
yeah.
and I'm like, and then at
And
that point,
that's and
at that point,
that's unique.
I don't even see the problem anymore.
Yeah,
I just see the solution. I'm like,
yeah.
let's do it. Like
Well, you're a
you
unicorn
gotta do
because
it.
most people will see the problem and get stuck,
It's
right?
wild, yeah. So then with the vision, like how was like was that tested? Was that ever tested for you in like in the school?
Absolutely,
How?
absolutely. So, I'll share one testimony of something that happened. So, as we continued to like we were outgrowing our spaces. We were basically we had a wait list of about a year, and it was always my vision to this was just like the beginning. It was never intended to stay as it was. So we start scouting for a location, and lo and behold, Louis, who now is fully on board with the vision,
That's low.
um, he finds this place, and it's a church, it's a local church. We knock on the door, and the secretary, who we love, says, "I'm sorry, I don't think they're renting." Uh, and we're like, "Well, we'd still like to try to come and uh, try to see if we can talk to the elders." And so she's like, "Well, you know, other people have come to try to rent for the school, and actually, not so long ago, they came and they asked them for $10,000 a month for the school because they don't want it rented." And I was like, "Well, we still want it." You know, that whole thing where someone's telling you no and
Yeah,
you're still like, "Okay, well,
mine's
never."
made up. What she says is
I'm
not gonna
not
change my
taking
mind.
no
Yeah.
for an
I'm not
answer.
changing my mind. It's not
Yeah,
happening.
yeah, yeah.
It doesn't
God's
happen.
gonna
Yeah,
make a
it's just
way,
not.
you
Yeah,
know?
there's only one way.
Yeah, so she gave us the appointment. Now, that was before the PowerPoint days. So I literally did what I knew how, which is go and get one of those board, you know, the the Dollar Tree flappy boards where the fifth graders do their
Yeah.
projects. And I just put pictures of what we were currently doing in our vision. And I gotta say, it was intimidating. So we're in this huge room. They had a huge round table, and it's a bunch of elderly black men, like the elders of the church. And here's this little Latina, trying to convince them we can partner up. And I want to show you our vision. But not only I want to show you our vision, I want you to jump on board because we want to be a blessing to you.
We want to
And
be a blessing to you.
yes. that was the pitch, and it was really not even the pitch. That was really our heart, and and so they're kind of like tough on the outside, and some of them, they've been there forever, set in their ways. This is a big risk to them, trying to open up a place that's really dear to them, and to have someone that's this young lady and her husband who are trying to like create something. And so they asked a bunch of questions, and they said, well, we'll give us a week and we'll get back to you. And we're like, okay, it's not a no, it's not a no.
I know.
And within an hour, they were calling us back.
What did they say?
They said, we want you guys to be here. Please tell us what you need and tell us how much you want to pay. We're like, wait, what? We knew you had said 10,000 to the last people that came. And here God is giving us extreme favor.
Mm-hmm.
Now there was risk. Mm-hmm. The place was falling apart. So we had pitched that we're going to fix this place and make it beautiful, not just for us, but for you. Mm-hmm. And we promise to be a source of support, which to God's glory, we have been for the last 20 years. Mm. But there was risk, and we had to invest a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of money to make the place be suitable for what we were going to do. But the vision was there. I went in there, and as you said, when there is a problem, you already see the solution. That's all you see. I saw walls that were caving in, and I could see the beauty beyond that, And that was just, I didn't see it as an obstacle. I was like, it's better because then we can make it what we need it to be, right? And so, yeah.
Wow. I have so much to say. Yeah. From you pushing past a crowd to get your crown, to you pushing past the secretary.
Yeah. Who we love, by the way, and coming full circle, she is now not the secretary, but they have a school on the second floor with her husband.
Wow.
For older children, and they've come such a long way. And to see what God has done. Yeah.
How many times do we say no to our own blessing? Don't even know it.
Yeah.
Right standing in front of us.
Yeah.
That's wild. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'm just
yeah. But let me tell you, pushing a few years, we were kind of at that place where it was like, oh my gosh, we're not making money. What's gonna happen?
What year is this? Year what of the business?
This, I would say, is about year 9, because for a good amount of time, the small school supported the big school. The community that didn't have a lot of resources, and so we were basically charging how much parents could afford, but also that made it very tight for us, right? But at that time, before that, I had been connected with an organization that was thinking of doing a program through PBS about people working with young children, even like from their home. And so I came in and did a pilot with them, and it was a pretty low budget, but it was picked up. And I was a panelist pretty often. And through that, I made connections, some which, I kind of look back and I was like, that was bold of me to like even ask.
Like what?
Like, so I somehow got to get connected to, I guess people knew of me in the show, and I ended up having to the producer asked me to if I could come and audition to be a host for the Spanish section of the program.
And what show is this? What's the name of the show?
It's called Para los Niños in Spanish, and it was for children, for parents, or having ideas what to do with children, and all of like how to care for them and stuff like that. And I didn't get the position of the host, but I ended up like becoming second, which I didn't really know. And I ended up meeting with the vice president of the channel. And so the president of the channel, I got to know who I was. So he invited me to this big like forum to speak, to be one of the guest speakers. And there I got connected to an organization, and that's called Para los Niños, which is like for the children. And I met the CEO and I got connected. Now at that time, we were okay, but we were like kind of already a little bit struggling. And I just went boldly and told her, I know that you kind of network, and we'd love to network with you. And she's like, sure, we'll get together, but didn't hear back from her. And I remember forgetting, because it's like it had been a while. And then one day we're driving to San Diego. We're at that place where it's like we might next month may be the last month. And I get a call, and it's the CEO. And she's like, I got something for you. I'm sorry I hadn't called you before, but I didn't have anything, but now I do. And they came over. And we had the school ready. Everything was prepared, right? And I remember sitting with Louis, and I was like, Louis, how many kids do we need to kind of make it through? And I think he said like 7 kids or something. And then the guy, the representative comes, and he sees the school. He likes what he sees. But then he sits us down, and he's like, so how many kids do you guys need? And we said 7, or the number, right? And then he puts his pencil down, and he's like, I can't help you. And my heart sank for a moment. And then he says, because I want to give you 25 kids. And I was like, and I, without a hesitation said, you give me the money, I will give you the 25 kids. Amen. Do not worry about that. And, we had a long partnership, and it was one of those things that it's like you're tested, but God comes through, and you know that he puts people in moments in place, and you trust in him, and you do your part, and you know that he will do his.
And one of the hardest things for a visionary to experience is when the vision that you saw so much promise in is about to die.
Yeah.
How did you reconcile that when you're like, okay, I only have a month left?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was seeing kind of the hard work, because at this point it was beyond just the vision. It was the actual labor, right? The time, the labor, the financial investment that had gone into it. And to kind of be put in that place, if I look back, I don't ever think I saw it closed. I don't ever think I saw it closed. This is the crazy thing. So I as I'm telling you this, you're gonna laugh at this story. I don't know who does this. Only somebody like me.
Like us.
Like us, like you too, yeah. In college, like I needed a class to graduate. And I remember, okay, you know what? I'm going to take it wherever it's available just because this is it, right? So I go to LACC and it's available. I show up, Chris, and like the teacher's like, I'm sorry, we don't have enough students to actually keep the class open. That's the only class I need, and I need it now. Otherwise, I won't graduate. Do you know what I did?
Recruited?
Yes.
Let's go.
I went outside and I was like, "Excuse me, are you interested in taking this class? This is crazy."
That's
I'm
great.
like, "What?" Now I'm like, "That was
That's
crazy.
great.
Why would I do that?"
That's
Right?
great.
But I was like, you know what? This is what I need, and I'm just gonna like figure it out. I'm gonna go out and kind of get it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And would you like to take this class? You know, we need a few students, and you know, just kind of like seeing the obstacle, but seeing it as an opportunity. I guess I don't know, like how am I gonna get out of this?
Yeah, it's
And
amazing.
then
You go
taking
ahead.
taking some risks that are like also calculated. Because then I was like, you know what? We didn't get the students. I'm not gonna risk it. I'm gonna go to another college and take it. But I still had to do what I had to do to get that class.
To me, honestly, sometimes I feel like, for me personally, it feels more of a risk to not do it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
If you gotta try.
I gotta try it, or else I
Yeah.
would go to bed every single night wondering
Feeling
like
like-
what
Yeah.
did what happened.
At
and what
least
didn't.
you tried.
At least I tried. So like,
Yeah.
I tried 3 times with USC.
Yeah,
I applied 3 times with
that's
USC,
right.
and because I went there 10th grade, and I just knew, like, I just felt the presence of the Lord
Yeah.
there, and like, this is where I need to be. This is
Yeah.
where this is what's supposed this is the place for me.
Yeah.
And I applied, and I was like, because I didn't have the grace to do it, to get in there, but I was gonna tell myself no. So hey, I
Yep.
tried, and
Yep.
I didn't get in. The next year, I was like, all right, let's see how great I can be actually in academics.
Yeah.
So actually, like, fun fact as well, like, I broke the record in my library hours in my first school.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So I broke the library hours, and I got 9 A's, 1 B,
Nice.
and I applied again, and didn't get in again.
Yeah.
And the lady says, "The Christian, it's just not time yet. You know, if you do the same thing you did last year, this upcoming year, then you'll be in." And I hang up the phone. I'm like, all right. 5 minutes later, I'm like, I'm gonna do it again. Let's go. And then I broke my own record
Resilience,
again.
right?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I broke my own record again. Two, and then I got 8 A's and 2 B's.
Nice.
And I got in.
Nice.
But I'm like, it just, we
Yeah.
had people throughout that time being like, oh, like, you know, USC, that's a tough shell to crack. I'm like, my God's a nutcracker. Hey,
That's
I
right.
don't care.
That's right.
Nothing
Yeah.
else matters to me. So, this is fascinating to me. So when you look back on the life of your school, you mentioned how you never saw it closing. You saw
Yeah.
like this huge blessing from, you asked him for 7 kids, and then he wanted to give you, 25.
Yeah.
That's also just wild, because your vision, like the vision was set, so you saw past it. And when that vision is strained, we often like it makes us short sighted. So you
Yeah.
focus on what you needed now,
Yeah.
and then God was positioning you for what you needed moving forward.
Exactly.
So what was that like from that point on? Like, what happened with the school from the 25 kids to what
Well,
happened?
it thrived, and then that program was cut. I think we were 10 years with the program, and then they had their funding cut, so they had to cut our funding. So we were kind of left in the same position again. And it's like, Lord, what do we do now? We trust in you. We trust in you. You're our provider, and just kind of, what is it going to look like? How do we now? It's a different type of targeting. So it's kind of like reinventing your business again to fit to the need, or to fit to what you need it to be. And that's what we had to do. And in that, I really credit Louis, because he was like, you know what? It's little by little, we started to see the growth without needing the support of the extra. But I feel like God had it for that season. But then he also needed to remove that again to make us available for the next stare, you know?
What was that?
That was catapulting us to a different demographic, to a different like space of how we were able to like even adapt our hours to bring extra things to the school, um, extracurricular things, and it just was one of those things that we were able to kind of be better. You know, we were complacent.
Mm.
We
What did that look like for you? Complacency.
Complacency was the rhythm of every day, the rhythm of these are the families, this is how families come into the school, this is kind of the day to day, and you know that you have something good, but not having to worry about making it better when you know you can. You know, and so God just kind of saying, okay, this season is over. I'm going to make you uncomfortable to make you better. And for you to grow, and as you grow, your business grows. And it feels like that happens in like cyclical terms, you know, where it happened again in COVID. We went from having 70 kids to 5 of an established business. You know, people were afraid, teachers were afraid, and then reinventing ourselves again. How is it looking? How is it going to look? And getting out of the possible being stuck. A lot of preschools closed during COVID. We grew. We grew.
How?
We
Why?
we grew because we saw our value. We saw who we were, and we were able to. So the Lord had been speaking to me about creating a website. I wasn't very technical. I'm still not, and I'm not in social media and all that. But the Lord had been speaking to me about that, and I had just been putting it off. And then it was like, you need to do it. And God just bringing the people. So one of the moms, she's an architect, and she had never done a website before, but I told her my vision and everything. I had already started working because I knew God told me you need to make a website. I worked on the content, so I had the content, and you know, it was kind of like through that God just took it to a different level.
I see that as you building an arc.
Yeah.
Like you making the content prior to the website actually being built, and then that actually carrying you through. Like,
yeah. And God providing, like, you know, God provided the people. She didn't charge us to build it.
wow.
She created the logo and everything. Just God just putting the pieces for the things that we needed. You know, He's always been our provider. And so he provides through different means, right? In different times, but he's always still the provider. He's creative in the way he does it, but he always is the one. And so when you have a business, you there's a level of you, but there's a level of God that's beyond you, that you know that you can only take it so far. But he's giving you that wit and that kind of like push to go to push through. And for us, it was like reinvent. We were better. We were just much better, and so we continue to just aspire for how do we become better? How do we grow as individuals, and how do we make our school better?
What did better mean?
How do we make it so that it's not just a place where kids come in and out on a daily basis, but how do we make it a community, for example? And maybe the word better isn't the word, but how do we make it more than what it is? And how do we make it a community? How do we make people like feel like they're a part of something bigger than them and their kids, that's going to carry through, that this is where they're getting a foundation, but this is a refuge for them too, you know? And that's always something that I kind of have right here. How do we make the spaces more beautiful? How do we make the kids feel like they're in a place that they're going to learn, but they're going to love to be here, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
those are always challenges for me.
How do you respond to challenges?
Huh?
How do you respond to challenges?
I I love challenges. I always delegate to, which is important, I think. My last idea was to build a chicken coop because I wanted chickens at the school. So Louis was like, chickens, really? So now we have chickens at the school.
Wow.
Bluey and Bingo. Building a garden at the school where now tomorrow parents are going to come in and with community, like plant and paint. And, it's like this is a place where we can find friendships and family beyond our immediate, family.
Got it. The last couple questions.
Yeah.
As you reflect on the refuge you created, what are some of the stories of how that refuge impacted the students at that time?
I I have a few stories of students coming back. One I'll share with you. Well, a few, but one in particular. This child, I love him dearly. He a single mom, and at that time, the kids would be in our program since they were 4 until they were out of 5th grade. So we had them for a very long time. And I remember he was very active, very curious, never really meaning harm, but very active. And it's like someone you remember, right? And one day I was in like the kitchen washing dishes, and parents come in through the side. So they would come in, and I knew all the parents, and I saw this man walking in, and I'm like, that's not a parent. And it was my student, a full grown man, and he was coming from Texas to see me to thank us for everything. And he said, I'm sorry because I know that I was kind of a handful. But he had so many beautiful memories of being here and the school and even all the materials he remembered. And um, another group of boys, siblings, the first group where the mom was insisting that she wanted her kids with us, who was a blessing, um, came back, and now they're grown men, and one of them is in law school.
Wow.
And they were here. He was here from when he was 2 till he was like 10. So, and they were here from 7 in the morning to 6 in the afternoon. So we were their extended family.
Yeah.
And so just that foundation, of being able to support and give back, it's very rewarding. This, and I think that's why I'm saying it's more than a job. It's something that I still go every day, and a child comes and gives me a hug, and to me, that is the most fulfilling thing. It brings me so much joy and so much purpose. And
Why?
that's the thing, because I know that that's what I'm meant to do.
Mm.
And even in the hard days, I still know that's what I'm called to do, and that's what I'm meant to do. And I find that as much as I, along with Louis and the teachers, have created this beautiful environment for them, that's a beautiful refuge, they also bring something to me, that it's reciprocal in a way.
Yeah. Darlene, visionary and unique is rarest of the rare. This is fantastic. Oh my goodness, this is fantastic. So, being the visionary you are, what do you see moving forward for Little Stars?
I am just very, very blessed to say we have 3 children, and our oldest, we've never Like all three of them, we want them to develop and evolve to who God wants them and has created them to be. The purpose and the plans, and each of them have different gifts and abilities. I see in Sophia a little bit of me and a little bit of Louis, which is really
Yeah.
beautiful because I see that she sees the vision,
Yeah.
and I see that she wants to take the baton to the next level and to the next generation.
Yeah.
And so I don't see this dying. I see this being carried on and expanding. I see us growing. Um, and I see us enjoying kind of mentoring her into the next season too, which is really going to be exciting. It's already exciting. She's
Yeah.
already working with us, and she's already giving tours, and
Yeah.
she's already doing a lot of that. So to see that and to hear her say, I really love going to the school, and I really love working. That's the part. You got to love it, you know? You got to love what you do. And that's really, I think, a blessing when
Yeah.
you do that.
All right. In closing, so for the people listening who have small children,
Yeah.
how would they be able to find us Little Stars?
Absolutely. So we're in West Adams, and you can look us up at www.littlestarsprek.com, and you can tour, and we'd be happy to have you.
Awesome.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Thanks for having
This
me.
was great. Oh my goodness. Like
I-
God makes you uncomfortable to make you accessible,
Yep.
and He makes you uncomfortable to make you better.
That's right.
Amongst all the other stuff. My goodness.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Yeah, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to make sure you get the latest episodes. And if you're watching on YouTube as well, subscribe as well, and leave a comment, helps greatly. But from the Hate to Lose podcast, I'm your host, Christian John Bradley. This was fantastic. Let's go. We're good.
Awesome. Awesome.
Oh my goodness.
Yay.